How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jeff, aka Son of Mar, on the PlayStation Network, and welcome back to Dear PlayStation. So, today's episode is going to be a little different. There wasn't a ton of news this week, so whenever there's going to be like a down week, or even a couple weeks that are down, I might not always find an opportunity to put a news segment in. And honestly, I want this to be more than just Dear PlayStation being a news channel where I talk about the latest news. I don't want it to be just that. I want it to be kind of a talk show as a whole. You know, just kind of like I want it to be somewhere where you guys as listeners can come in and just hear me rant and rave about anything and everything PlayStation. And one thing that I have done in other shows and episodes that we've done, specifically Rocket League, is the video games of the PlayStation library that haven't been touched in a long time. So, for this Dear PlayStation, I want to talk about a game that I actually haven't really referenced as much as others. In the background right now, as you can tell, is a game called Dark Cloud. Amazing game. I fucking love it. I never got around to playing the sequel, but I do eventually want to pick it up and play it, but I still need to finish Dark Cloud before I do that. But that all being said, I don't want to talk about Dark Cloud. That it is fitting that this is here because Dark Cloud is one of those games that I do want as a franchise to have a new title of soon. But that'll be another video for another time. Same thing with Ape Escape. You know, a lot of these episodes of Dear PlayStation are going to have a lot of PlayStation 2 game footage in the background. So what game do I want to talk about? It's a game, again, I haven't talked much about, and it's called The Getaway. For those of you that remember the game called The Getaway, or for those of you that don't know what The Getaway is, here's a refresher and kind of just a quick as fuck synopsis of The Getaway. For those of you that might know a movie called The Italian Job, a movie made by, if I remember the director's name correctly, Guy Ritchie. Or really just Guy Ritchie in general. His movies are essentially what The Getaway kind of fundamentally is. It's a crime caper type of video game that has Grand Theft Auto attributes to it, that pretty much centers on a man that just got freed and rejoining his family, trying to get out of the life, gets pulled back in because the mob pulls him back in by framing him, killing his wife, and then they steal his son. And they basically force him to do these jobs for him. It's a very classic, very basic story premise. There's a lot more to it than that. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it was one of the first games I played on the PS2 that really, besides Grand Theft Auto 3, that really had an open world to it, that had a really fascinating story to it, really interesting characters, and that just like molded a whole bunch of different things together. I'm not saying it was the only one. It was one of the first ones that really did open world, a very intriguing story, interesting characters. It essentially did what Grand Theft Auto did, but with less side stories and less zany. Because for those of you that remember Grand Theft Auto, there's a lot of side stories. There was a lot of crazy zaniness to it, and it was very satirical, and it still is. Grand Theft Auto is the perfect reflection of satire on the American culture. It just is, and it always has been, and it always will be. It's always going to make fun of America as a whole from many different points of view. It always has, it always will. The Getaway was different because it was more of a story-driven, more of a movie-esque type of Grand Theft Auto situation, which is why it was such a cool game, right? The driving, like whenever you like make a turn, your blinkers come on, other cars like react kind of to your driving mechanics. It was such a great game, and the sequel wasn't as good. I remember the sequel, Black Friday, I believe its name, or Black Tuesday, one of the two. I know it's Black something. It's been a long time since I played the sequel because, to be honest, the sequel kind of fucked up a golden opportunity because The Getaway, the first one, was just a solid, great game. It really was. I mean, the story's basic, sure, but it was a fun story. It was a good story. It was enjoyable, and the characters and the world that was built in the game was great. On top of that, the mechanics were sharp, they're good, they're solid, and the franchise really had a good launching point at that time. Black Tuesday kind of fucked it up because the story just was not very good. It was muddled. The characters weren't nearly as interesting as the first game. and really it didn't mechanically evolve much. That's always one thing I will give Grand Theft Auto credit, especially during the PS2 era, is that, yeah, the PS2 era, they cranked a fuck ton of games out. When you really think back to it, they cranked out technically around 5 Grand Theft Auto games. Yeah, 5 Grand Theft Auto games just for the PS2 alone, because they did the Grand Theft Auto 3, San Andreas, and Vice City, along with Vice City stories and Liberty City stories, which were ports of the PSP game, sure, but they still took those games and put them on the PS2, right? On top of that, I think, if I remember correctly, Chinatown was also on the PSP. So, I mean, in general, during that era, they made 6 PlayStation titles, which is insane. I could be wrong. I don't remember when. I think I might have my chronology wrong about Chinatown, but that's not the point of where I'm going with this. Is that each Grand Theft Auto kind of added a different flavor, did something new, did something quite different. The Getaway didn't really do that with the sequel, and I think the Getaway, the sequel being what it was, and that the fact that I'm pretty sure it didn't sell very well, kind of made the series kind of fall apart, which sucked because the first game was so good. Also, it was really the only big game that I can remember, at least off the top of my head. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to be corrected wrong, just so that, from my train of thought, when I talk about Sony London, I know a little bit more of what I'm talking about. But off the top of my head, Sony London, the creators of The Getaway, that was their one and only really big AAA title. Because beyond that, they predominantly have made these entertainment, kid-friendly games, right? They predominantly have made the Sing Star games for the PlayStation and like some dance games. They've made a lot of just very family-friendly oriented content for the PlayStation, which is nice, don't get me wrong, but it just sucks to see a studio like that made The Getaway, and it was such an amazing game. They haven't been given an opportunity to do something like that again, right? Which maybe they just haven't had the resources or the personnel really allocated to do something about, right? That is something to wonder about. But there is actually something relevant that, in news-wise, does wrap into what I'm talking about that I do want to bring up. Recently, Sony has laid off a lot of people. Well, not a lot, but they have shrunk the team size of some of their studios. For instance, the guys over at San Diego Studios, they shrunk because the Killstrain team was pretty much completely let go, which sucks because Killstrain was a decent game. It was fun. It was interesting. I liked it from the little bit that I played. Don't get me wrong, it's still probably going to get supported, but it just sucks that team had such a bad situation because, like Colin Moriarty at Kind of Funny Games always says, and I do agree with him, the free-to-play platform just doesn't work for a lot of game types on home consoles, and it doesn't. For some games it does. There are very specific ones that do for a short amount of time work in that model. A good example would be Paragon or Smite or Neverwinter, games like that maintain an audience for a certain amount of time. But there is a significant drop off for a lot of free to play titles because guess what? It was free to play. Most people don't invest that much into it. I'd say 20% of the audience that does play a free to play honestly probably put money and a significant amount of time into those games. At least in consoles. I don't know the statistic off the top of my head. I have no idea. But there is a point where I'm going with this. If you're following me, I appreciate all you guys that are listening and following. On top of San Diego Studios having a shrinkage, Sony London also experienced that too. But their situation was different. They lost a lot of senior personnel and some other staff members that were all involved with the VR. Because Sony London got the opportunity to be one of the first studios to work on VR because they were the ones that made VR Worlds. They were one of the big studios that was working on it, right? So a lot of their members left. I recently started watching some gameplay of The Getaway recently, and then I started connecting some dots. And I realized this. Sony London made VR Worlds, and they snuck in a section called London Heist, which is eerily familiar of The Getaway to me. Very, very familiar of The Getaway. So to me, this is a blatant opportunity at attempt for Sony London to kind of gauge how people might feel about a game like this again. Whether it be VR or not, they're going to gauge how people react to this specific part of the VR Worlds game. Which is exciting because then that means that if VR Worlds gets a pretty good reception, specifically the London Heist section of the game, that should be a good indicator, especially for Sony London and PlayStation overall, that maybe, just maybe, that this would be a good opportunity to revisit the Getaway franchise and maybe think about bringing it back. Now, here comes, some downer stuff, sure. This is just a rumor and speculation. Or not even a rumor, this is speculation. I apologize. It's not a rumor, it's speculation completely because I am basing my knowledge off of what could be and the sneakiness that video game companies and studios sometimes do with games, especially with announcements. With something like this, I wouldn't put it past Sony to sneak in a new game release like The Getaway into development because of the reception of a game like this. I mean, they've done that a couple times in the past where people have really well received a certain kind of game, so then they gear up into this, whatever. I'm pretty sure that's part of what happened with Days Gone over at Sony Bend. Sony Bend saw the immense reaction and belovedness of The Last of Us. And while they aren't completely copying The Last of Us, they definitely took a lot of inspiration from that game. And I don't blame them. They're doing enough different with it that I think it still is its own thing, but you can definitely tell the inspiration for it. And I think you're going to see a lot of games going forward that are going to have mimics of The Last of Us. Christ, Horizon has a lot of influence from The Last of Us, which is not surprising. Because, Guerrilla probably saw what Naughty Dog was doing and was like, we want to make a really heavy story-driven game. This game was one of the best story-driven games in recent memory. Why not mimic them? It sounds like I'm getting off track, but I am revolving back into the main topic of the Getaway, I promise. This is a golden opportunity for the PlayStation to have the Getaway return, in my opinion. And I guess there are two ways to gauge audience reception to it. Number one, VR Worlds. Because London Heist, if that's a really well-received part of the VR Worlds demo, that's fucking amazing. Because then that should be a good indicator that at least there's a subsection of the audience that thinks that the Getaway in that form, or just in general, has some chutzpah, if you will, or some juice left in it that you can mine. Because there's only 2 games in it, It's not like it got oversaturated. There was only 2 of them. And plus, Sony London deserves more to do than just doing these sing-song games, right? I think they deserve a true AAA game to work on for once. Because it feels like they haven't worked on shit for a long time. The other way they can gauge audience, interest in this project would be this. The PlayStation 2 and the PS4 titles. They need to bring back the Getaway, the first one. Not the second one, the first one with trophy support and all that. And, hype it up. Because then that would, again, gauge interest, and that would make things very, very interesting. So, with that in mind, hopefully that we'll see another Getaway come in the future. I really want it personally, but let me know what you guys think. Check out the Getaway if you don't know what it is. It's on YouTube. Hope you guys liked this episode, guys. I'm going to do some more content just like this in the future about more specific game videos. Hit the like button, hit the sub button. I love each and every one of you guys. Hope you guys have a great night and a great day and whatever, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.